House Bill 920. These were vetted earlier this week in Life and Health Subcommittee. Going down to the front, Representative Teasley also has to go present a bill in Judiciary this morning at 8 o'clock too. So we're allowing him to go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you again for letting me scoot here quickly. Bring before you House Bill 920, dealing with life insurance and annuity policies. Over the last several years, there had been a number of. The reason I'm bringing this, for the bill is in the last several years, a number of life insurance and annuity companies who did both were using the Social Security Administration's Death Master File, which basically keeps record of the deaths in America. And some of the companies were using the Death Master File on the annuities, but not on the life insurance policies. And this got into the news. There was a big to-do about that, and frankly, a number of them have self-corrected in terms of their own policies moving forward. But we wanted to put into code that all companies moving forward as of January 1st, the effective date of this bill, would use the Death Master File on both life insurance policies to make sure that life insurance claims are paid out in a timely manner, as well as on the annuity policies as well. The operative language, really where the after definitions begins on line 62, where it says an insurer shall perform a comparison of its in-force policies, annuities, and retained asset accounts issued in this state against a Death Master File on at least a semi-annual basis to identify potential Death Master File matches. And so with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions of the full committee. I know that there are a number of insurance companies that are very much in favor of this. As a matter of fact, an insurance company brought this to me, spoken at some length with the Department of Insurance, and they are also in favor of this bill.
Representative Teasley, I think Section B on that same page is line 65. They only have to use the Death Master File once, and then from that point on, they can use updates too. That's correct.
Okay. That's correct. So in other words, a company must use the Death Master File once, and this is a change we made in subcommittee the other day. Is that you don't have to keep going back to the full Death Master File, but rather the update file as they come out.
Okay. Number 9. Who's number 9?
That's me.
Okay. Representative.
Representative Teasley, since I went on the subcommittee, what is on line 71 and 79, why in the 90-day period? Why is 90 days in there? Is that just a number they pulled out of the sky, or?
I think it's to put on there a certain time limit, a reasonable time limit on. They ought to. They need to be acting in good faith and give an answer within a reasonable amount of time.
So you think 90 days is fair?
I do.
Okay. Another question, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes, go ahead.
On Section 3, 122. If you're unable to locate a beneficiary located in the state, why in the word estate put in there? The estate of, say, Sam Teasley, or estate of Carl Rogers, or Ben Harbin, or Richard Smith? Isn't that true as far as a beneficiary?
Point that out to me again.
Line 122 to 126.
Okay.
If you're unable to locate a beneficiary, which is common in,
yes, sir.
in death claims.
Yes, sir.
So if no beneficiary, if the person applicable for unclaimed reporting has a last unknown address in the state, if I probate a will or have it probated, why can't it go to the estate of rather than if you can't locate a beneficiary? I don't know. That's the reason I'm asking.
Okay. If you'll give me just a second to read
Okay.
through it now. And so your question is, could, instead of a sheeting to the state, could we not have it go to the estate of?
A lot of life insurance policies do that. You have a primary and a secondary, and I don't know what the department wants or why in the estate of a person included in there if you can't locate a beneficiary.
I certainly don't have an objection to that. I mean, that's certainly reasonable.
Can I defer to lead counsel on this? Lynn, can you help us out on that matter? 121 through 126, when you can't locate no beneficiary.
Well, as I'm understanding this, and someone in the industry might be able to answer this better than I, but I think this is the last effort. In other words, the policy, the insurance company has tried to either find the primary, secondary, and this is just the process by which they're saying now it's going to go under the Unclaimed Property Act, and it'll escheat to the state because all of these things have been done. But like I said, one of the industry people here that deal with life claims might be able to answer that better than I. I hope that answers the question.
Well, I guess you're saying if no beneficiary, you're saying my state is not a beneficiary.
Well, is what I'm saying, if they've gone through the process
Okay.
of looking at the contract, and I think this is basically saying that no beneficiary, whether it's the estate or an individual, has been located, then this is the process. And it's kind of looking at the whole thing as opposed to just, I think, that particular language. You could add beneficiary or estate if that
I think
clarifies
that
it
needs
for
to be
you.
put in there just for clarification,
Okay.
in my opinion.
I'm comfortable with that.
Are you making that as a form of a?
Well, it does, but it's saying, do what, Mr. Chairman?
Are you making that as a form of?
I think, yes, I would like to put that in form of a motion that the estate of to be included in there.
So what you're saying is unable to locate a beneficiary.
Beneficiary
Or
estate of
estate of.
insured, yeah.
Okay. Okay. One number 11. I think Mr. Maxwell. You had your.
Yes, sir. I was agreeing totally with what the Legislative Council was saying, that this was, the way I took it was to mean that after all efforts have been exhausted to locate the beneficiary or anybody associated with the estate. I guess my question is, we've got everything determined or defined in here. I don't see a definition for beneficiary. If we define beneficiary in this clause somewhere, we got policy defined, person means the policy owner, insured annuity, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we just need to define who the beneficiary would be. Yeah, I guess it is. It's probably defined in the contract. Maybe we don't need that. But to me, I'm fairly comfortable with the way it is. This is the final process. If the beneficiary, no one else could be located, then it goes to the state. Maybe I've confused it again.
Okay, number 22.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too was going to concur with Chairman Maxwell, because this is, the beneficiary is an individual or it is an estate, and you've already, it's almost duplicative if you add it again, because the beneficiary can be either one.
Right.
Thank you.
For instance, I just, as many of you know, just went through the death of my parents. And so I went through this process to a certain extent of, yes, and
It can
the
either
beneficiary
be,
can be an estate, of course.
right, it can be either one, so it's including both would be my interpretation of it. Thank you.
Okay, 26.
She said exactly what I was going to say. I agree. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm in total agreement with what they just said.
Okay.
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay. Jason. Oh, darling. Okay. Chairman Rogers.
Mr. Chairman, I'll withdraw that amendment.
Okay. Any other questions? We're looking at LC 371736S, substitute for House Bill 920.
I move we approve by substitute.
All right. So, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Thank you, sir. You can go to judiciary. All right, let's go to 610. That bill was passed by this committee. We found a hiccup in it a little bit later, and Mr. Williamson, yeah, you can do it from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I bring back for the reconsideration House Bill 610 by committee substitute LC 371732. Like the chairman said, we just wanted to be very careful on the definition of frankly how attorneys are handled in this bill, and we've got unanimous agreement. We tweaked the language slightly, and all parties are in agreement, and would like for your ask for your favorable consideration of this committee substitute. Be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Rogers, do you have your light on? Chairman Rogers, do you have your light on? Oh, okay. 18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know you didn't tell us what you did, right?
Well, you're right. It was the first iteration could have construed that an attorney did not have to get a license for insurance. That wasn't the intent. That they would automatically be able to represent an insurance company and sell insurance without an insurance license. That wasn't the intent of the original language. In working with the trial attorneys and the insurance company, and with lots of help, we got that language tweaked and tightened up where everybody's in agreement that if an attorney wants to become an insurance agent, they have to be licensed as an insurance agent like any other member of the general public.
What line?
I'm sorry. Okay, bear with me. I've got 3 iterations of this thing in front of me. Okay. 32S. It was line 32 in particular, and then 58 through 60 61 tightens it up. Isn't that correct, Lynn? Isn't that the lines? Look to Legislative Council. Line 32 and then lines 58 through 61.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Second? Second. Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Thank you, sir. Okay. Let's go to House Bill 828. Representative Mabra.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I bring before you today House Bill 828. This is a bill I take pride in carrying. This is a bill that deals with barratry. That's sort of the legal definition of it, instigating litigation, but most people know of this bill as dealing with ambulance chasing and dealing with runners. There's a big issue going on with runners contacting people who've been involved in car wrecks. And you say, what is a runner? A runner is someone who works for an attorney or for a doctor that goes out and gets business doing illegal means, unsolicited phone calls, paying police officers, paying tow truck drivers, paying EMT workers, people at emergency rooms to get car wreck victims' information so they can reach out to them, get them to go to a particular attorney or get them to go to a particular doctor so they could represent them or so they could treat them for injuries from a car wreck, and that way they bill the insurance company, and ultimately it's a fraudulent transaction. It's black market dealing. These runners deal with a lot of cash. They're paying police officers. The attorneys are paying the runners as well, and it needs to stop. We don't need Georgia citizens being solicited by these unscrupulous people, lying to them, giving them fraudulent and misleading information. As you'll notice on this bill, this is something that attorneys are supporting. All attorneys have signed off on this bill, including one law school student who will soon be an attorney. We have support from insurance, and we also have support from NICB, and this is the National Insurance Crime Bureau. And not sure if you all received the letter via your email, but I have hard copies here that you can see. But this is something that takes place not in the state of Georgia, but across the United States, and states are enacting laws to prevent this. I'm an attorney, if you don't know. There's a few bad apples out there. They're giving our profession a bad name. It needs to stop. I'm willing to carry this bill and say, hey, we require better from our profession, and we're not going to let this small percentage of attorneys give our profession a bad name. And also you have doctors that are involved in this too as well, and it will apply to them. I ask for your favorable consideration and look forward to answering any questions.
Okay. Any questions for the presenter of the bill? Okay. Number 29.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add, it is, number one, thank you for bringing it, and I support you.
Thank you, Representative.
It's also a violation of the Attorney's Code of Ethics to do this, and we police within our profession that sort of thing. But we can't police the runners, and we can't police the bad doctors and that sort of thing. So I appreciate you bringing it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, number 10.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mabride, quick question. Are the socks part of the uniform for a runner?
Well, the chairman said he liked my socks, so I said I'm going to leave them on then. I was going to change them. I brought an extra pair in my bag with me.
That's a brave man.
Okay, number 21.
Representative Mabel, thank you for bringing this bill. It seems to me like it's long overdue. I just want to ask you, I'm not an attorney, so I'm asking you as an attorney to help read this for me, but where is the teeth in this bill? Where is does it go after this runner or the attorney or the doctor or who, or all
Everybody,
of the above?
everybody. And great question. It names it specifically, if you look at 37 through 42, it starts naming out individuals that are involved in this illegal activity, from law enforcement officers, record staff, you have emergency room workers, physicians, hospitals, attorneys, doctors. Everyone is named in there. But where the real teeth comes in is that now it's a mandatory, it's a misdemeanor first offense, and you have mandatory jail time and a fine of at least $1,000. That's for the first offense. Second offense, it's a felony, and we give wide latitude and discretion to the judge and prosecutor for up to 10 years in jail and up to a $100,000 fine. We need to hammer these people because this is wrong, it's illegal, and it needs to stop.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Maber, thanks for bringing this bill. It sounds like a great bill. My question is just to understand a little better.
Yes.
So one of these runners, they're employed by the attorney, and so they're getting paid by the attorney, and is that generally how it works? So I guess I'm just want to make sure that, one of my friends needs a lawyer, and I say, man, Ronnie Maber did a great job for me. Here's his business card. That wouldn't be misinterpreted to catch something like that, right? It's just these people are employed by the attorney.
Absolutely, it's a point of contact. There's a reference point. You know your friend. What happens with runners is that they're not technically employees or on the books. It's a cash business in which the runner will pay the police officer or someone that has contact information, get it and reach out to the wreck victim and say, hey, I got your information from a national database of wreck victims, and they're lying to them and get them to go to an attorney or to a doctor.
Okay.
Once they get to that facility, whether it's an attorney or doctor, the attorney or doctor will then pay the runner most likely somewhere around $1,000 to $2,000 in cash for that patient or client coming into the office. So it's a cash business out there, and it is illegal, and it's a lot of money moving around.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. All right. Got a motion. Motion. Do you have a question?
I was making a motion.
Okay. Well, I think we had. Go ahead, Ms. Huber.
I like to move too fast.
All right. Thank you. All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I wish I had a pair of those socks.
Don't worry, I'll get you a pair.
I didn't say I was going to wear them, but I did that. Oh, they know.
Got the camera on?
That's bold. That's bold. Thank you, sir. All right. Next one is House Bill 943. I think this is another one of those bills that's had gremlins attached to it somewhere down the line. Representative Hawkins, House Bill 943.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're receiving a handout right now that I'll be referring to off and on. House Bill 943 deals with parity in the delivery of anti-cancer medication, or also known as chemotherapy. Right now, predominantly, chemotherapy is in two forms, IV and oral. The history of chemotherapy has been mainly IV. I've been practicing dentistry for 36 years, and I've seen quite a change. And typically what we would do is we'd see a patient. It's probably nothing worse than I've ever thought of as looking at a patient and saying, I need to refer you, your biopsy is, it looks suspicious. It's a nice way of saying, hey, you have cancer. Sometimes I actually say you have cancer. Try to avoid that until we get a second opinion, though. But this is a really tough road for folks, as you know. Usually this happens to people that are in the prime of their life, raising families, or in the prime of their business life. So cancer becomes a really devastating disease, not just for the patient, but for the family. It's very expensive. It takes you out of work. And the agents that we used in the past were primarily poisons. And what we did was we used a poison, thank you. We used a poison that worked on the cells, and the knowledge at that time was the fastest growing cells were cancer cells. So you used a slow poison and we kill them first. Of course, you're poisoning good cells, but that was the best we had. You know, then we just cut pieces of your body off, or take an x-ray machine and burn a hole through you. Unfortunately, burn the outside of you and everything in the path of that machine. A lot of things have been improved. The x-ray oncology with different systems, surgical techniques, but in particular, oral chemotherapy. There's been great improvements in that. Instead of just poisoning cells, we're targeting cells. Like some of the leukemia cells, there's a chromosome called the Philadelphia chromosome. Agents are targeting that. And the most effective one, in that case, the chronic myeloid leukemia, is an oral agent. So now we've stepped into the world of today and into the world of the future. What this bill does is it is not a mandate. In fact, CMS in 2013 had a statement printed May the 2nd. You don't have a copy of this one. I couldn't print everything. We don't have a lot of printers on my side of the building. But question 40 addresses that, and CMS does not view this as a mandated benefit. Because what we're doing here is we're not telling insurance companies they have to cover oral chemo. What we're saying is those companies that do cover chemotherapy, do cover cancer, that they will cover oral in the same benefit direction as they do IV. Because presently what you have is, if you have IV chemo, you will go into the hospital or an infusion center, and it's handled on the hospitalization side of your plan, your medical plan. If you are prescribed oral, then you will go to the pharmacy, and that's handled on the pharmacy side of your plan. If you have the IV, you've got copays, $30, $40. If you go to the drugstore, you've got a percent. These drugs, and if you'll look at the two graphs that you have, and let me tell you about these graphs. The graphs, one was done, the red and blue graph was done by a national group. I had a pharmacist in Gainesville, who's vice president of the Georgia Board of Pharmacy, do the other graph for me. And he's researched the drugs. I didn't give him the national stuff. I just asked him to do this. And if you look at those two graphs and hold them up, you'll notice how identical they are. Now, in the red and blue graph, you can see that Zolenza is the beginning of the oral. On his graph, Zolenza is about midway through, and that's the beginning of the oral. The rest are orals. So as you can see, that the orals are actually not as expensive on average as the IVs. But, in full disclosure, the orals many times are used for a longer term of treatment. So they're thereby indicating to you why the CMOs and insurance coverage companies have not been fast to go in this direction. Obviously, for the patient, you may have a surgical port placed. You may have a child that's on an IV pole and never leaving the hospital. A lot of situations with the older drugs are really tough. These newer drugs will allow patients to go back to work and actually take oral medication at home. So what we're asking in this bill, when you look at this bill, is we're asking for that parity to be also recognized in Georgia, because 27 other states have already done this. 22 states do not have a copay, which you see at the end of this bill. If you look at the last paragraph, so on 53, we talk about cost requirements being no more than $200 per filled prescription. Okay? Those cost-sharing requirements are described on lines 17 through 19. Co-insurances, co-payments, deductibles, everything. Now, we've done a lot of work with the CMOs on this bill, and out of those 27 states, 22 states do not have a number in that last paragraph. And they have been gracious enough to agree that they will review this and possibly reduce this in the years to come, okay? Because in their defense, there is an unknown here of how much this is going to affect them. So, also, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I do have an amendment on this bill.
Okay, well, go ahead and talk. Go through your amendment then.
Okay, on lines 22, midway through lines 22, after you see 2015, we will be striking including but not limited to those contracts executed by the Department of Community Health pursuant to paragraph da-da-da-da-da, ending up with the numbers 31-2-4. That's the end of the strike.
So your amendment to this bill is to delete including but not limited to those contracts executed by the DCH pursuant to paragraph 1 of subsection D of code section 31-2-4.
Well said. Perfect.
Just deleting
yes,
those?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Now, I have some good news, although we're deleting that line. The good news is your state health benefit plan already covers this. Okay? We're not sure what the fiscal impact would be on Medicaid, and so with that, I'm forced to remove that from the bill. Not to say that in the future we may revisit this, but you know, we are on the frontier, the new frontier of this. So I would ask for your indulgence with that, and also ask for your support and vote for this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hawkins, when we met several times over this particular bill, I think one of the things people need to understand is when he mentioned percentage for cost of oral drugs at your pharmacy, the number we kept hearing was 20%.
Right.
So, you know, if you've got a $10,000 drug that's quite a hit. So we've met numerous times with the insurance folks, and they are everybody is very supportive of what we've got here. So, all right, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Hawkins, just looking at the original bill, I'm looking at LC 371737F.
Right.
And looking at the substitute on line 26, you added specified disease. Well, somebody did.
On line 27?
Well, on the
Right, line 27.
26 on the, I see it now on 27 on the original
That's fine,
bill,
that's fine.
27.
Uh-huh.
Excuse me, on line 26 on the, one was specified disease put in there for short-term policies.
What this is referring to are policies that this cannot affect and should not affect, and so there are policies for specific diseases. Those small limited policies specified for specific diseases, and so this only applies to oral chemotherapy, okay, chemo drugs. Some of these drugs now are actually going to be used as chronic drugs. We have certain diseases, multiple myeloma being one, some of the lymphomas and leukemias. These patients, and breast cancer, those are all formed for breast cancer. These patients will be taking these drugs for the rest of their life. It is almost like the AIDS, HIV drugs. You don't conquer the disease, but what you do is you put it into a chronic phase, in which you control the disease. So if we weren't specific in the bill about this disease, we could run into situations of drugs for other diseases, and that's not what the aim of this bill is. Not that they may not deserve it, but this bill is specific for oral.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Rogers?
Well, I'm not sure I heard the answer, but I was just...
Specific disease. We don't want to put this wording into policies that handle specific diseases, targeted diseases.
Mr. Harbin.
Thank you, Representative Hawkins. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Specified disease, just to follow up on Chairman Rogers' questioning. So a cancer policy, you're not including this language in a cancer policy, even though we're trying to get coverage for cancer.
No, I would say this would cover a cancer policy.
But that's a specified disease.
Yeah. I see your point. This was written up by lead counsel. I don't feel like we would have a problem within that. I think we're fine, but we can ask lead counsel about that.
Okay, let's ask legislative counsel.
Well, what we're targeting are the large coverages that people have available to them. And this is, to be honest with you, more, pre-drafted ways of making sure that you're not putting this requirement on these limited benefit policies. And that language is traditionally part of it.
Right.
But I understand what you're saying, but in this case, it does take care of it does exclude the specified disease if it is cancer, one of those policies. Now, I don't know whether, because of you have don't you usually have another policy though, and that's like a supplemental? And I think the idea is not to have the coverages under the supplemental type of insurance that people take out.
I mean, and I understand the intention.
Yeah.
That's what we do with most
Yeah.
mandates. That's the usual language that we usually use for most mandates, so that we're covering just a group health benefit policy, which group health benefit is offered to everyone. The supplementals are purchased individually. It's an individual decision. It can be done pre-tax, post-tax, doesn't matter. Typically, it's taken out of your paycheck.
Right.
But the specified disease is a cancer.
And that would be up to the author, really. I mean,
I'm not, I support your bill.
I appreciate it, and if you see an improvement, I'm open to any improvement.
I'm just asking questions. That's just what
Yeah,
I'm.
that's the first time the question's been asked, so I'm not.
Well,
I'm not
I was only
insurance.
led there because Mr. Rogers is smart and I was following his question.
Right. Well, listen, I'm fine with y'all making an improvement on the bill. My goal is for patients to have a choice. I want patients to have this choice. Economically, you can see by the charts, it's not going to cost the insurance companies more money. It's just that traditionally they've been used to going down this side on the insurance. They flip levers, and they're used to doing the levers on the hospital side. Now we're asking them to do it on the pharmaceutical side, which is going to involve other companies and other aspects. So, but here again, if you have an improvement, you see that we need to do something with the bill.
Well, I don't want to delay your bill. Time's running out. I don't want to delay your bill, but thank you. I think it's something to look at.
Okay, number 26.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the language as it is in the bill, and because it's my opinion that the specified disease policies are typically, what I always call indemnity policies. They're workplace marketing products, not comprehensive health insurance plans. They're one famous Georgia company that specializes in that industry. Typically, those. I'm not an expert in this field. I was a property and casualty guy, but it's my understanding that they're going to name the disease and then have a maximum benefit they're going to pay, typically on like a monthly or whatever pay. And this condition may or may not trigger. It's probably going to be triggered anyhow, but given the fact that they've been diagnosed with cancer. But it's just a specified amount of money that the policyholder will receive on a monthly basis. So. All that being said, I think your language is appropriate in this bill to make sure that the intent is to cover the pharmaceutical benefits that are typically covered in a comprehensive health insurance plan, like most folks choose to have their families covered by, like the state health benefit plan or the typical Blue Cross Blue Shield plan or United Healthcare, whatever that an employer might be offering their employees, or even on an individual comprehensive health plan basis. So I support the language like it is right here because I think it gets to your intent to cover only the comprehensive plans, if that makes sense.
Ms. Hughley.
I was just going to say what he said.
Okay. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your goal, then, Representative Hawkins, is to only deal with the oral issue of cancer, correct?
With this bill, oral parity.
Okay.
Oral parity.
Gotcha. Right. Mr. Chairman, I'll.
Okay, I hear. Oh, got one little thing. Got an amendment. We're striking line 20, where it says included but not limited to those contracts executed by DCH pursuant to, and then ending on line 24 at 31-2-4. The recommendation is to remove that section. You make a motion to approve that. All in favor, say aye. All right, now we're going to vote on the whole bill. House Bill 943 to hear a motion to pass as amended. All right, so moved. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Thank y'all. We may have a special meeting later, but you'll be given notice, plenty of time. Thank you.